Do you ever see a painting or read a book or watch a video and think, man, I could make something better than this? Well, I was reading this poetry book and I had that exact same thought, but I decided to follow through. And while reading, there would be a lot of poems that started off so good and then just went south. But they weren't in like fully bad poems. It was more like cringe a little bit and then send a picture to my friends so I can complain about it with them. And instead of not finishing it, because I hate leaving books unfinished, or just putting it in a category on my shelf of bad poetry, I thought, what if I tried to make it better? What would that even look like? How would it go? What would I try to improve? And what would I keep? But before I get into my process and how I made these changes, I want to first give a disclaimer. I got this book for $5 from a used bookstore. I knew nothing about it. I did not look at the artist beforehand. I did not try to look up reviews. I just liked the cover art and thought, sure, I want to read more poetry. Let's do it. I am in no way trying to knock Jeffrey or any poems that are like the poems in this book or anything that I truly criticize. Like, this is just my single opinion. And this is more so an experiment on my own thoughts and what I like and trying to push my creativity. There is still a lot that I like about this book and a lot that I grew to like about it through working on it. But I just want to be clear that I'm not making a claim to anyone's artistic merit or to the value or the inherent goodness of the poems in this book. You may like some of the poems that I didn't like, and you may hate some of the changes that I made. And that's okay, because that's what art is. And I'll get more into the argument on good art versus bad art later in the video. Just wanted to put this in here now. This isn't a hate video. This is a creative expression video that happens to start from a place of not liking something, if that makes sense. But now let's get on to how I went about this project. So I first started by numbering all of the poems, and then I put them into separate categories. There were poems I really liked, poems I liked a few lines of, but there were some things I wanted to change, poems I liked the premise of, poems that I wanted to kind of experiment with a bit, and then poems that I wasn't going to touch at all. But of the 45 poems in this book, there were 10 that I put into the good category, and then 20 that I wanted to go through and edit. And through all of this editing, I learned a few things. 1, editing poems is hard. It is time to remake this poetry book in my own image. I'm hoping to go through, do a few of them now. Like, there are just some where it's just like, there's just like 1 or 2 lines where I'm just like, why are you in there? I'm very excited. So this is one where there were just a few lines where I just didn't like it. I'm gonna try to add some back in though, to just kind of see. I don't know. This first one, we're experimenting. This whole thing is just an experiment. Creative. We'll see what I do. It's one thing to look at a poem and know, there's something I don't really like about this, and then it's another to go, okay, well, what is it that I don't like? And also, if I take out this singular word that I don't like, or if I take out this line that I feel like doesn't connect, or you realize how interconnected everything is, because it's like, oh, well, now I have to take out the next, like, 4 lines, too, because they all play into the same imagery that was introduced in this first line, and so it's like, now I'm getting rid of half the poem. Which isn't necessarily a problem, because I do like shorter poems. I don't know what it is, maybe it's just my writing style typically leans towards shorter pieces. So even in the ones that I did get rid of like 1 to 2 stanzas in, I was okay with that. But it also did feel a bit wrong because I was trying to go into this to challenge my creativity and to push myself as a poet. And so just like getting rid of things felt like I wasn't fully doing that. That felt more like just critiquing and criticizing the poems as opposed to like trying to grow and improve my own writing muscles. But oftentimes I just didn't have much to say. I just kind of wanted to tighten it a little bit to be something that I related to or connected to or felt reflected a clearer message. But a lot of it was also me just deleting the second thing that I learned. I hate poems about I literally just cut out this whole page. But I don't even think there's anything else I want to add to the poem. Like, I just cut half of it. But then, like, I kind of like it how it is. Like, I just... These 2 paragraphs here are about bestiality. Like, I'm just gonna cut that. I'm not gonna add
anything in place of that. You know?
So yeah, my main problem about this book is that the poems would start off in a completely innocuous place, and then just suddenly we'd be in the bedroom, and it's hold on, okay? Don't listen. I have many things to say on this, okay? I think that poems about explicit material are fine, and there are actually quite a few that I really like and really enjoy. With two things. One, when that subject is either the main premise of the poem, and so it's like when you go into it, you kind of understand what you're getting, which I guess was the case in some of these poems. Play boner etiquette clip.
This one, the title is Boner Etiquette. I just don't know. This one, like some of the other ones, I can find the artistic merit in. Right, like there's one where he's talking about what the word for tongue should be, and he talks about all of the sounds that our mouth makes, and the emotion and experiences behind those sounds. And in it, he talks about that in an explicit way, which I think makes sense. It fits the poem, right? I don't understand the purpose of a full poem that gives off the same vibes as Blue from Heathers the Musical. I don't know what to do with this.
But I think I just appreciate poems like that more when there's like emotion or meaning or some commentary behind them, as opposed to just like horny teenager vibes. But then some of the other poems in this book just kind of seem to just like add in like 1 to 2 lines about like nudity or about like explicit things, almost as like shock value, or just like sometimes they just felt very out of place, where I was just like reading a poem and I was like, oh my god, I love this, and I'm like, and cool. I don't want that imagery in this poem that's about something completely different. And listen, this is just my perspective, okay? Maybe I'm being too harsh, but I really, really, really did not like how often the poems were blatantly explicit with just like no substance almost, or how it was just like always talked about over and over and over again. That is like, if that wasn't in this book, this video wouldn't exist. Because this was like the only like subject and the only thing that just like kept happening, that I kept getting like so annoyed and frustrated with, where I was just like, oh my god. I also didn't end up talking about what I did with the Boner Etiquette poem, which I did just go through and write the lyrics of Blue from Heather over top of it. Yes, is not very flexing my creative muscles and is not trying to improve my own poetry skills. I get it, but it was the only thing I could think of, and I really did not want to leave this poem as is in the book, because if I was improving this book, I could not say I successfully did it with that poem untouched. And honestly, I do kind of really love how the page turned out. Like, it feels so simple, but it feels like the best thing I could have done to edit or to add it. It doesn't completely change the intent, because there was one poem that was really explicit that I then like kind of flipped the meaning of and made it still explicit but more about a different perspective. This wasn't doing that. Instead it was more like, I don't know, playing into, I don't know what it was doing. I like it, and I think that now I don't have to look at this page and want to tear it out. So I'll count it as a success. And once again, having explicit things in poems, or just even having any element I don't like in a poem, doesn't mean it's bad. All I did was remove the things that made me personally enjoy the poems less. It's really just about personal taste and preference, which like poems are never going to appeal to everyone. They shouldn't. So like it's okay that I didn't like them originally. It's more so by doing this and by removing these things, I was just putting my little personalized stamp on them. But now for lesson number 3, which gets us into the more positive things that I learned while doing this, which is that you can find inspiration for poetry literally anywhere. My absolute favorite part about this book and this project was trying to work within the confines of an already constructed poem, like either taking a motif or a theme or a subject matter, even sometimes just a title, and running with that and creating something of my own, or more challengingly, building on to what is already there. For example, in the poem I Send You This Leaf, the beginning of the poem kind of talks about how an object can remind you of that person, but it uses like the structure not because of blank. And so I just added my own, where I said not because, and then I kind of wrote out my own lines that followed the same structure and the same meaning and the same intention of the poem, but just kind of with my own thoughts. And this was like, I had so much fun doing this because it was so much fun just like looking at the poems and analyzing like, okay, what can I add? What do I want to add? What more do I want to say? What of my own thoughts and experiences can I translate into something that works within this thing this person already created?
I think what I'm going to do today is I want to try some blackout poetry, which is basically where I create a new poem just by blacking out all but a few words. And some of them, that's the goal. We'll see how it goes. God, okay, I was gonna do a blackout poetry for this one, but oh God, it makes me sad because I don't want to just like completely cover up the poem and like get rid of some of it. Oh, okay, we're gonna try. I'm doing it with pencil. I can erase it, right?
And it was very fun getting to use my creativity in these ways and really kind of push myself, but within the structure of something that was already existing. Either replacing 2 lines that I didn't like with exactly 2 more lines that had the same syllables or had the same number of words, or just adding a stanza that still fit the flow and the rhyme of the already existing poem. It was honestly a lot more challenging than I thought than just like creating something original, because there were more rules and guidelines that I had to follow in order to make it still sound good with what already was there. But that leads me to the last point that I want to talk about in this video, which is, what is bad art? I mean, I titled this video that, I have said it multiple times in this video, but let's really explore kind of what this means. Reiterating that I'm not denouncing Jeffrey and the time, energy, and effort that he put into this book, or that any artist puts into their art. As an artist, I do have a hard time calling things bad because I can understand and recognize the struggle and passion and drive and energy that went into making something. Like when I don't like a painting, I'll be like, oh, I don't really connect with that, or oh, that's not my personal taste. When I'm reading a book, I'll try to find any sort of like positives I can give it. I'll be like, oh yeah, but like I guess that's just like me being nitpicky, you know, it's not actually that bad. Like anything that you think is bad, someone else may think is a masterpiece. And I always try to give artists the benefit of the doubt of just knowing that it's not my own personal taste or preference. And I mean, based on the back blurbs in this book, it's obvious that people loved it. Once again, if you read it, you may love some of the poems that I hated, and you may hate some of the poems that I rewrote. And that's okay. I think the thing that gets confusing in this era of content slop, just scrolling away your joy, is the fact that art isn't about dopamine. Oftentimes I'll hear students in film or literature or art classes talk about how they don't want to critique the pieces that their teachers bring to the discussion because they're worried that like talking negatively on it is going to equate to a bad grade, and that in order to give commentary and give adequate understanding of a piece, you have to like it. Or I'll see people talk about how they don't understand how people can hate read or hate watch stuff, because if you hated the 5th poem in a row of some guy talking about it, why didn't you just stop reading? I mean, for me, like I said, I can't leave a book unfinished. That's that. I can't. So I knew I was going to finish this whether I liked or hated it. But also, with this book and with pushing myself to finish it, it is within that halfway mark that I got the idea of, why don't I try to do this experiment? Why don't I try to push myself a little bit more? Whole inspiration for this came out of me not liking it. If I loved this book, I would have read it and been like, great poems, and never thought about it again. But this video also wouldn't exist if I didn't give myself that curiosity and that inspiration out of the things I didn't like. it's actually important to look at things you don't like, whether it's a movie or a book or a TV show or poetry, and taking the time to understand that and really go, okay, why didn't I like that? Oh, they're asking me to critique a movie that I thought sucked? Well, let's talk about why I thought it sucked and dig into that emotion. It's fine not to like everything. Not everyone is going to feel the same way. Not everyone is going to have the same perspective. And it is also within that discomfort or that distaste or maybe hatred in some cases that you might even find you create something that you do like. You might write an essay about this book, movie that you hated, and it can be an amazing essay. You can write a critique about an art piece, and you can find new insights that no one would have thought beforehand because they're all just trying to praise it. There can be a lot of conversations that come out of anger and frustration and distaste. I'm sure you've had conversations with your friends about a movie you just walked out of that was absolutely terrible, and the jokes sucked, and all dinner you guys were just laughing about it. I got to try something new and critically think and challenge myself more with this poetry book than I have with any other poetry book I read this year. And that is what art is supposed to do. It's supposed to get us to think and dive deeper into our emotions and our thoughts. And I'll be honest, doing this project helped me gain a deeper appreciation for this book. There are a lot of poems that on first read through I was like, I don't really like that. And then I started to read it to edit it. And I went, there are actually a few lines here that I really enjoy. Or I actually do really kind of like this wordplay here, or this motif that I just didn't pick up on the first time around. Like, it turned from a book that I would have just like put on my shelf and either pulled out with my friends to be like, read this poem, see how ridiculous this is. Or when I was moving and been like, why haven't I thrown this away yet? And instead, it's something that I'm gonna look at and be like, yeah, I put so much time into this book. I put so much thought, and this was a new thing for me. It allowed me to really think critically. And don't get me wrong, the other poetry books I have are good, but I just have so much more time in this one now. Which takes me back to my original point that I was getting to a few minutes ago about good and bad art. I think it's hard to say for certain why people stick things through. Why certain people like things when you think it's good or bad. And maybe good art versus bad art is a topic that I should dive into in a future video, because there is truly a lot to say here. But at the end of the day, art is subjective, and I know you've heard that before. But when I say art is subjective, I'm not saying that some people will think a painting is good and some people think it's bad, and that's just how it is. I think art being subjective really means that some people will get more out of it and some people won't. I could have looked at this book and gone good or bad, but even if it was in the good category, I might have forgotten it. But instead, it inspired me, and I got to make something new, which is technically a marker for good art. You may have noticed that there are actually very few poems from this book that I showed, either in their original or in my edited version, and that's because this video was never about the poetry itself. I don't want to tear someone down. I don't want to spend this time just critiquing poems. But I also don't want to just praise my edits and additions. I just wanted to talk about inspiration and trying to find inspiration and an exploration of your thoughts, even in places you might not think it is. Because I honestly think that things you don't like are a great place to start. If I tried to do this experiment with a book I liked, I would have been like, but I don't want to mark it up. But I don't want to ruin the pages. But this one, let me mark all over it. Let me draw. Let me experiment. Let me do something new. So if you are curious, I actually highly encourage you to pick up this book, read it, form your own thoughts, make your own edits. Now, earlier in the video, I said how this wouldn't exist without the book. And the other thing that wouldn't exist without this book is my new poetry series over on Substack. Throughout the month of December, I'm going to be sharing some unfinished poems or inspiration that I had that I just didn't actually manage to write a poem for. I highly encourage you to follow along and either write something new based on the prompts or to edit my own poems. I'm really hoping to create something accessible for anyone wanting to try poetry, because I think it's a beautiful medium, and I think a lot of people see it as this kind of like untouchable mammoth that's like incredibly sophisticated. And I hope that by sharing and walking you through each step of my process, it might be a little bit easier for you to pick up on your own inspiration. If you're a bit more advanced in poetry, maybe this video can inspire you to do something new with my own poems. try blackout poetry, try rearranging the words that I have already written, whatever you want to make the prompt your own. The first post will be going live the first weekend of December, and right now I have a few poems up that I wrote in November, so if you want, head over to read those, as well as subscribe to see the upcoming articles. But thank you so much for watching and sticking through this video. I really enjoyed this process. I am so glad I did this. This was so much more fun and fulfilling, and I learned a lot more about art and how I process poetry than I thought I would. Like, I thought that this was just going to be... I did think that this was going to be a bit more critical at the beginning, I'm not going to be honest. I'm really surprised with where I ended up, and I just am even more inspired to read more poetry. But thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.